Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. Today we're going to be taking a look at a replay with myself playing the High Elves, AVERLORN specifically. I know, right? Me playing the High Elves? I figured I'd been beating up on them quite a bit lately, so I probably ought to show some replays of them actually, doing well. So here we've got this High Elf build. We're up against Norsca. Alariel's going to be leading the way, of course, for AVERLORN. We've got mixed Spearmen and Dryads in the front line, got some archers as well, and 2 Phoenix Guard up front with 3 Illyrian Reaver archers. As for my opponent's army, he's got a couple of Ice Wolf chariots here, Marauders with great weapons, and regular Marauders mixed with a single unit of Berserkers, which are the Brutes of the Hound. He's got Wulfric on foot, a Death Sorcerer, and some Famir. We've got Miststalkers here, and Famir with great weapons on the other side. In addition, there are 2 Feral Manticores making their way up and around to take that flank. So yeah, AVERLORN. When you guys are playing High Elves, I pretty much always recommend playing AVERLORN if you have access to the DLC, as you get access to Dryads. Now, they are more expensive than if you were to take them as the Wood Elves, but it still gives you another relatively cheap, kind of mid-tier infantry DPS option, especially because the High Elves don't really have like a mid-tier DPS option on their base roster. They don't have anything like, Black Ark Corsairs. They don't have anything like Flagellants or Battle Pilgrims or, something like in that class of unit. Dryads definitely do fill that role, so they're very, very nice to have, and it just gives you the ability to go a little bit wider in your front line while optimizing your cost a little bit better, which is, of course, very important for the High Elves. Now, you can see here a beautiful Sea Fang. It does only cut through 1 unit of Spearmen, though, and we're going to do a quick hit-and-run charge with these Reavers, just to kind of break up the Norscan advance. You can see the Feral Manticores making their way over here. The Spearmen are holding up some chariots here quite nicely. Granted, the chariots will do some decent damage, but at the same time, they shouldn't be sitting in sustained combat for too long against those spears. Meanwhile, here you can see the Reavers starting to pull in. We're going to start unleashing all of the arrows on the Manticores, of course, because they are low armor, relatively high value targets, and they also are a big danger for Alariel. You can see I'm going to start to squeak away and actually interrupt those chariots as they charge through. Alariel does some pretty good damage there. Meanwhile, over on the far side, we're going to detach some of these infantry to come support this main line, and these Phoenix Guard are going to come try and deal with the Miststalkers here, while the archers are just unloading. Unfortunately, Alariel gets caught on the ground by both of the Manticores, and this is going to be really, really bad for her. She's taking a ton of damage right here. We've got Faw's Protection, just casting Earthblood as well to try and heal a little bit. But you can see we're able to screen one of them out on the unit of Phoenix Guard, which is exactly what I was hoping for. The other one did manage to get up in the air to follow up on Alariel, but you can see here in the back line, Chariot starting to punch through. Looks like we're going to be seeing a Vortex as well. Purple Sun gets unleashed there. It is going to go on top of these archers and do quite a bit of damage, but thankfully it didn't do too much to my skirmish cav. Likewise, we've got this Manticore to enrage now, so I can kind of kite it around, lead it to different places. Same thing with this Manticore that got screened out by the Phoenix Guard here. Of course, Phoenix Guard, an elite halberd unit, will be able to take care of them very well. Meanwhile, Alariel drops down on top of this Phoenix Guard to use her healing. Unfortunately, the Manticore follows up, and the Miststalkers are right here. It's enough to rout off Alariel, but since the Manticore is enraged, he's going to stay here and fight these Phoenix Guard, and the Phoenix Guard will absolutely beat those Famir given time. Even an elite regiment of renown like the Miststalkers, I mean, they are just designed to get killed by Phoenix Guard, right? So despite the fact that Alariel actually ran away, she just came back from routing there, and since the Manticores both enraged themselves into Phoenix Guard, we are definitely in an advantage now. The Dryads are doing okay in the front line. This unit especially, well, over here on the far side, they are getting pounded a little bit here, but again, just gives you more numbers to work through, especially like the Norscan units once they get to their higher levels of physical resistance from enrage, then it's definitely useful to have that. But nonetheless, you can see Wulfric taking little damage here so far. He is now starting to work on those Phoenix Guard. Balance power still almost completely even, since Wulfric's so healthy and Alariel's so tattered. But as far as the infantry fight goes, I mean, there are still some Spearmen here, but a lot of these Marauders and Brutes of the Hound have taken some significant damage, and both the units of Phoenix Guard are still relatively healthy. And I'm not the biggest fan of Phoenix Guard in most matchups. I think that generally elite halberds, the way to counter them is just to run away from them, basically, because their infantry, they're slow, they're usually heavily armored, they're they can't really keep up with a lot of the units that they're meant to be fighting, so unless you can really pin them in place. That being said, Norsca relies so much on units like Famir, Chariots, you know, different kind of monsters that this is one matchup where Phoenix Guard can do very, very well. You can see the Reavers coming back now. They're going to get a nice rear charge here to start breaking up some of the leadership here. And likewise, the Manticore tries to come back from route, but we still got some archers on station. They're able to fire in and shatter his leadership. And with that, the Norscan player is going to admit defeat. He still had quite a bit left, and the balance of power was honestly still pretty even. But, I mean, he had lost both of his Famir, both of his monsters. Wolfric was taking a bunch of damage, so it was only a matter of time before I was going to be able to pull that one out. But yeah, back to my original point. AVERLORN. If you're playing as the High Elves, you really ought to have the DLC, and you really ought to have AVERLORN. I mean, I haven't started my pay-to-win discussion yet for the Game 2 factions, but, spoiler alert, the High Elves are one that really, really, really benefit from having their DLC. One of the biggest benefits, I mean, obviously Alarielle is very powerful, but those Dryads, 575 for a nice little DPS unit, 60 armor, some physical resistance, good weapon strength, good attack stats, just generally a nice cheap unit to help pad out your numbers a little bit. You can see both units of Phoenix Guard taking a little damage there, fulfilling their role, taking out those Famir, helping to take down the Manticores as well. Despite the fact that Alarielle took so much damage early on, you know, if she had been taken out, it still would have been tough. There just wasn't really a lot of tools here to deal with the Phoenix Guard. I mean, maybe like a really good Purple Sun, but that's kind of a little bit of RNG. If you're really worried about elite halberds as Norsca, they are definitely a danger. There are some things you can do, mostly spell-based, but if we have a look here, I mean, obviously, Seafang doesn't do the most AP in the world, but it will do a little bit against elite halberds, so it's worth using in that situation. As far as magic goes, of course, you could do something funny like tear the armor off with Plague of Rust, and then get some, like, non-armor piercing champions to fight the Phoenix Guard in melee. That could work pretty well. Marauder great weapon champions actually trade okay against Phoenix Guard. It's reasonably cost effective, especially if you have some buffs on them. But yeah, metal allows you to do that. That's really the best way of dealing with them with lore of metal. I mean, you can also do, if you overcast Plague of Rust, then Searing Doom will also do a lot more damage, so you can kind of combo those two together to get some pretty good damage done. If you don't want to take Lore of Metal, if you want Death, then obviously you have Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna. Fate of Buna being very good against infantry units like Phoenix Guard would be a good use for that. Lore of Fire is a little bit riskier to take against the High Elves because they do have some fire resistance floating around, but generally this Piercing Bolts of Burning does pure armor piercing, and it does just a ton of damage. It will absolutely wreck Phoenix Guard, assuming that they don't actually have fire resistance. I think it's just the Dragon Princess, right? Yeah, they don't actually have fire resistance, so this Piercing Bolts of Burning would absolutely delete them. Likewise, if you got a really good Flamestorm, that's kind of relying a little bit on RNG. The Bombardment certainly is a little bit more predictable, but yeah, that would be kind of how you do that. You could Fireball them maybe from like a side flank or something, but it might not be that effective. For Lore of Shadows, there's not really, I mean, Overcast Penumbral Pendulum does okay armor-piercing damage, so, you know, especially if you combo that with the boat, then you can deal with elite halberds that way. But just generally, when you're playing as Norsca, watch out. And on the flip side, with the High Elves, you definitely want to take AVERLORN, unless for some specific reason you want to take one of the legendary lords that's not with the AVERLORN faction. But in most matchups, Alarielle is the most competitive option. And of course, taking this faction also, again, gives you access to the Dryads. You do also have a few other units, Treekin, Treemen. It's okay to have access to them. It's not amazing. They, again, are a little bit more expensive than what you would get if you brought them as the Wood Elves. If we have a quick comparison here, 550, so it's, what, 25 points more expensive for them, 50 points more for the Treekin, and 75 more for the Treeman. So yeah, only 25 points difference for the Dryads means that at 575 they still are very cost effective. 33 melee attack, 34 weapon strength, of course weak to fire, but they do have physical resistance and a little bit of armor, plus magic attacks. The magic attacks are actually quite helpful against, like I said, Norsca with their physical resistance, other factions with physical resistance like Skaven, you know, Dark Elves sometimes. Just generally it's useful to have this, unless you're playing the Dwarves, of course. But in that case, you probably don't want to take any of these units and just, chariots and stuff. That is a discussion for another day, though, so hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.